Europe was enjoying a period of peace and prosperity at the beginning of the 20th century. Powerful empires like Germany, Britain, France, and Russia dominated the continent. Millions of people lived normal lives, unaware of what was coming. Germany's industry was growing rapidly and making the country stronger every year. Britain controlled the seas with a powerful navy and a vast global empire. France continued strengthening its army to protect its position in Europe. Russia ruled a huge empire and commanded one of the largest armies in the world. European nations were forming secret alliances behind closed doors. These alliances divided Europe into two rival camps, increasing tension between countries. As competition grew, nations expanded their armies, built more weapons, and prepared for possible war. Europe still looked peaceful on the surface, but beneath it, tensions were rising every day and a massive conflict was getting closer. The assassination that started it all happened in Sarajevo on June 28, 1914. Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife were traveling through the city in an open car, surrounded by guards and crowds. A hidden assassin waited in the streets, watching the motorcade approach with rising tension. As the car moved through the narrow roads, the moment of fate quickly arrived. A sudden attack triggered chaos in the city, and everything changed in seconds. News of the event spread rapidly across Europe, shocking governments and leaders. Austria-Hungary began preparing a strong response, while other nations watched closely. Behind the scenes, tensions between countries started rising faster than ever before. What looked like a single event would soon become the spark of a global war. The assassination in Sarajevo quickly pushed Europe into a dangerous political crisis. Austria-Hungary met in emergency war rooms, preparing a strict response to Serbia. Soon after, an ultimatum was delivered, demanding harsh conditions that Serbia had to answer. Under intense pressure, Serbia's leaders debated what to do as tensions rose rapidly. When the demands were not fully accepted, Austria-Hungary declared war. This decision triggered a chain reaction across Europe. Russia began mobilizing its massive army to support Serbia. Germany reacted immediately, preparing its military plans for a larger conflict. France also ordered full mobilization as the situation escalated. Germany then moved through Belgium, expanding the war into Western Europe. Britain entered the conflict after Belgium was invaded, turning it into a wider war. Very quickly, Europe was divided into two major sides, each activating its alliances. Millions of soldiers began marching toward the front lines across the continent. What started as a local crisis had now become a full-scale world war. World War I quickly became a new and brutal kind of war. Soldiers stopped advancing easily and started digging trenches to survive. These trench lines spread across huge areas of the battlefield. Life inside the trenches was cold, dirty, and full of fear. Between the sides was no man's land, completely destroyed and empty. Artillery explosions constantly shook the ground and filled the sky with smoke. When orders came, soldiers climbed out of trenches into deadly fire. Most attacks caused huge losses with very little gain. Soon, the front lines stopped moving and the war became a stalemate. World War I reached some of its most brutal battles in 1916. At Verdun, fighting continued for months under non-stop artillery fire. Entire forests and villages were destroyed, leaving nothing but ruins. Soldiers on both sides fought in extremely harsh and exhausting conditions. At the same time, a new major offensive began on the Somme. Thousands of soldiers went forward into deadly fire across open ground. Machine guns and artillery caused massive losses within minutes. Despite the huge cost, neither side gained much territory. The battlefield became a place of endless destruction and suffering. By the end, Verdun and the Somme showed how deadly and exhausting the war had become. The war was no longer limited to Europe. As the conflict continued, new fronts opened across different parts of the world. Fighting spread to the Middle East, Africa, and the oceans. Powerful navies battled for control of important sea routes. The Ottoman Empire became a major part of the conflict. Meanwhile, Troops from many colonies were sent to fight in distant lands. Factories worked day and night to produce weapons, ammunition, and supplies. Far from the front lines, civilians also felt the effects of the war. Food became harder to obtain, and uncertainty spread through many countries. By 1917, World War I had become a truly global conflict, involving millions of people across the world. By 1917, the war had reached a turning point. The United States decided to enter the conflict and support the Allies. Thousands of American soldiers began crossing the Atlantic to Europe. Their arrival brought fresh troops and new resources to the battlefield. At the same time, Russia was facing serious problems at home. Protests and unrest spread across the country as people grew tired of war. The Russian Revolution changed the nation and its government. Soon after, Russia withdrew from the conflict. This allowed Germany to focus more forces on the Western Front. But with American troops arriving in large numbers, the balance of the war was beginning to change. After years of fighting, all sides were exhausted. Germany's final offensives had failed, and Allied forces were pushing forward. Fresh American troops continued arriving, strengthening the Allied armies. Meanwhile, Germany was facing serious problems at home. Its economy was struggling, and many people wanted the war to end. German leaders realized that victory was no longer possible. Negotiations soon began to stop the fighting. On November 11, 1918, an armistice was signed between the warring sides. At 11 a.m., the guns finally fell silent across Europe. After more than 4 years of conflict, World War I had finally come to an end. Although the fighting had ended, the effects of the war were far from over. In 1919, world leaders met at Versailles to decide the future of Europe. The Treaty of Versailles placed heavy conditions on Germany and reshaped the map of the continent. Several powerful empires disappeared, while new countries emerged. Across Europe, people began rebuilding their cities, economies, and lives after years of destruction. But many believe the peace treaty created new problems instead of solving old ones. As the years passed, tensions slowly started to rise once again. World War I had ended, but the road toward another global conflict had already begun. And if you want me to tell the story of World War II, don't forget to like and subscribe.